Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Jennifer, Dyan, Ghoston. Looking forward to our conversation today. Jennifer, so much.
I am too, Simon. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you. This is the lady with the most velvety voice that we ever have on the show, right?
You're so kind, far too kind. Thank you.
So, I just share my truth. So, Jennifer, healing, da da da. What does it mean to you?
Well, let me just first say that my right brain wanted to have some fun because you know how you used to say, and you probably still do, listeners, I have a treat for you today, right? And I said, I have to have a treat for Simon. So I spent a couple days thinking about coming up for your, what is this, healing framework, turning the word healing into an acronym, right?
Ah, okay. We like that.
Yeah. So for H, we have help. E, we have evaluate. Actually, I like experiment better because I was listening to your episode today with Heather G. Marshall. I really like her. Thank you for putting us together because she and I had a lovely conversation the other day. And I listened to both of the episodes and she loves that word experiment. So we got help, experiment, appreciate. These are all verbs, right?
Yeah.
Listen, investigate, navigate, and grow. And I figured out that's why healing is going to be a lifelong journey or adventure for me. Because all those words I just gave you, 7 of them, spell out healing. And that's what it means to me. I can apply that to pretty much any and everything on a daily basis. Because I like to think I'm always in this healing mode or interested in healing. And that's what I would say it represents.
Yeah. Do you know where the name Thriving Adoptees came from?
You may have told me. Tell me again.
So it's because I love an acronym, right? I love an acronym. So it came. I had this idea of my head for Thrive, right? And making Thrive an acronym. So it was T for trauma informed, H for healing obsessed, R for realizing our resilience, I for getting clarity on our identity, V for vision for the future, and E for empowering others.
Oh yeah, I like that. If I heard it, I don't recall, but I like that.
No, I don't know if I've shared that before, but so yeah, I love an acronym. So, which is your favorite out of your acronym, your 7-letter acronym, healing? Which is your favorite? Which does your right brain think is your favorite?
Oh, I like how you phrase that. My right brain, yeah, because my right would say something different than my left, for sure. So for my right, I would say experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
experiment.
so, what experiments do you mean?
So when I think of that word, and I really have to give Heather credit because when she shared it with me the other day when we were on the phone, I thought, absolutely. Like, you don't have to take things so seriously. You can just kind of experiment, like just see what happens. And I'll use my podcast as an example. I had no idea. I listened to podcasts, but I had no idea of what it would be like to be a podcaster. And looking back, thinking back to 2021, like in the very beginning, it was an experiment. It really was, because I had to learn the equipment, right? I ordered the mic, I ordered the recorder, I watched YouTube videos, I read a book, a very good book, and I listened to other podcasters with a different ear. But it was fun. Learning was fun, growing, right? And navigating my way and investigating, like what to do next. It was an experiment.
Yeah.
And it failed, right? Like if, and when I say fail, I mean, if I realize 20 or 30 episodes in that it wasn't a good fit, I could just stop. Because I did learn back then that most podcasters don't get to 100 episodes. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, what's the opposite of experiment?
I don't know. Not trying it, not trying
Not trying it,
something,
yeah.
not giving it a go.
Not
What do
giving it
you
a go.
think? Yeah.
So, and um, how does that relate to healing? Is it other than it being the E of healing? What does, I mean, taking things less seriously? You could, the thing that flips to my head, it comes into my mind straight away from that, is taking trauma less seriously.
Mm.
You know, like, so I came up with this idea. There's these dark metaphors in the adoptee space and the trauma space. You know, the primal wound. You know, like, it's dark, it's scary, it's black. The body keeps the score, right? The body keeps the score, and the body's going to settle its score with you, Simon. The body's going to settle the score with you, Jennifer. You know, it's just waiting. It's just waiting for when you're not on guard, and it's going to jump on you and scare the bejesus out of you. You know, um,
That sounds like the left brain.
yeah, that sounds very left-brainy, doesn't it? Yeah, but it takes things seriously. We take. You know, I came up with this idea of. I was thinking about scores, and I came up with soccer scores, right? So I came up with this idea of trauma 1, adoptees united 10, right? So trauma scores first, as we know, pre-verbal trauma, all that, da 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 da. Yeah, but by coming together as a team, yeah. So adoptees united. The word united means coming together as a team, and it's 10-1. So we're coming together, and we're, as Americans might say, whooping trauma's ass. You know, because they've scored first, but and they're at home, right? Trauma's at home. The first team's name to appear is the one that's at home. So we've won away from home. So that makes it even better. And it puts a little bit of lightness into the idea in a world that is just full of darkness. You know, I was interviewed. Have you come across Anna Ginger? Have you come across? She's got this podcast. So she asked me to come on her podcast, and she.
What's the name of her podcast? I'm sorry.
It's called the Anna Ginger Show, I think. It's called the Anna Ginger Show, yeah. And she sent me this poem. She sent me this poem, and so part of our conversation was about this poem. And the poem was just 100% darkness. There was no light. There was no light. There was no shade. It was just trauma all the way. And I said to her, look, I can't come on the show. I can't come on your show if you know. I had a visceral reaction to reading her plan because it was all dark, and we're taking things too seriously. And yeah, we've got to take it. But like, if we can just lighten up, right? If we can just lighten up. Like, so I heard this fantastic thing a couple of months ago, right? That the fact that many people are looking for enlightenment, right? They're looking for enlightenment, but we don't need to look for enlightenment because we are the light. We are the light, and that light has been endarkened by our trauma. So our trauma has hidden us. It hasn't hurt us. And like, and enlightenment means going outside into the world, whereas realizing, and it's going to take some time, it's going to be a journey and all this stuff, and it's going to be tricky. But right, if we realize that we are the light, and that light has been endarkened, that happens in, you know, that realization can hit us in a moment.
You know what's coming up for me? May I share this with you?
Of course, I'm supposed to be interviewing you, and I've just been sharing my stuff for 3.5 minutes.
No, I love it. I think it's great when we can have a conversation. And yeah, I call it playing catch. You know, I throw you the ball, you throw me the ball. I think that's great. But what's coming up for me now is one of the guests you had on, Jill Bolte Taylor, who talks about the left and the right hemisphere. And I tell you, that episode, as I told you, I listened to 3 times. I took 4 pages, maybe a little over more than 4 pages of notes, because what she shares in there made it clear to me that this healing it's when all parts, right? She talks about 2 characters on the left in our brain, 2 characters on the right. And when they can kind of have a brain huddle, she calls it, then there's an opportunity for there to be this whole living, as she calls it, whole brain living. The book, the title of her book that I have been reading. And when you asked me that question in the beginning about, well, which one stands out to you, which out of all of them in the acronym, and I said experiment, it was in that moment that I realized we've got to have the right brain being able to participate, right? It's important because the left brain can kind of take over for me. Sometimes it's like, okay, do this, do that. This is how things are going to work. You need to be on time, you name it. But the right brain is kind of like, well, let's just see, let's have a little fun. Let's play and entertain ideas where healing is doable and we will be fine. So I think it's important when we think about healing to think about how the left and right brain interface. Like, that's a big part of it. And if your listeners haven't checked that episode out, I highly recommend it. I think it should be required listening. It's really, you did a really great job. And Jill Bolte Taylor is amazing.
Yeah.
With what she shares on that episode. So
the link will be in the show notes, listeners, to the interview. And she's a neuroanatomist, she calls herself. She had a left brain stroke, and she lost all self-criticism that's it. That's it in 2 sentences. There's a lot more to it than that. I love your word entertain ideas. You talked about entertaining ideas, right? So that I'm working on this trauma framework at the moment, and one of the ideas that one of the beliefs that's come out of that is that some people don't believe that they can heal. They don't believe, some adoptees that answered that questionnaire don't believe that they can heal. So I would say, what if we could entertain that idea?
And the right side of the brain is probably the one that would be more willing
and open.
Yes, open. Yes, open. Suggestible. Yes. I just recently listened to a podcast where the guest was an MD, I believe, and he was talking about the left and right brain. And he said that and I thought, yes, he said, the right brain, the right side is very interested in entertaining the left side. It's the left side that's not too interested in entertaining the right side. Don't you love it? I was like, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So
I like your word, open. Yeah, open.
Open, curious, right? Coachable, right? So coachable, open, like open. The space, the space, creating the space for a new idea, creating the space, or being the space for being the space for a new idea. I heard this listening to a Gabor Mate. I bought an online course, and it's got videos and audios. And he asked a great question on something that I was listening to yesterday with him. How he said about himself, how loyal am I to my trauma? How loyal am I to my trauma?
Wow.
Like how loyal are we? What's and we can play with that. We could put that with the football analogy, couldn't we? The soccer analogy about yeah. Well, we could make it about trauma 1, healing 10, right? And which team are we rooting for, right? Which team are we loyal to? Like, and it's just like a little bit of a glimmer. It's like, like when you remember when you were losing your baby teeth and they wobbled before they come out. Yeah. So if we look at a belief such as we can't heal, or such as we can't, or we can only heal in reunion, or we can't heal if we find out our birth mother's dead. Then we can't heal. We can't, whatever the belief will be, right? What if it's like a tooth, and we can just start to wobble the baby tooth, right? We're just wobbling the baby tooth. We're trying on a new idea. We're entertaining, use your word, we're entertaining a new idea. We're entertaining the belief that we may be wrong? How willing are we to be wrong? How much do we think we've got the whole thing worked out? If we wobble that tooth a little bit, then eventually it's going to drop out.
You got me thinking about when it would be loose and sometimes a bit painful. And then there came that moment, right, where I just got it out of there, or it just slowly came out. Like I look up, oh, it's out. Just kind of revisiting.
Yeah, you might not even notice it's out till you spot it on the floor, or you spot it on the and then you've got to leave it under your pillow and wait for your mum to give you 10p or whatever it was, 10 cents, whatever it was.
I was gonna say, I was trying to remember how much was it? Was it a quarter? Yeah. You're taking me way back. Boy, that's going way, way back.
Yeah. The experiment goes with investigate as well, doesn't it? If I'm looking at your acronym, investigate, it's like, okay, am I gonna investigate this? What this truth? Is that what you're talking about?
By investigate, I mean just look into whatever it is a little bit closer. You know, these words, as a matter of fact, that I chose have a lot to do with what I hear when I have a guest on my podcast or in the adoption community. These words come up a lot. Navigate, listening, of course, appreciate, and investigate comes up quite a bit too. It's up there with curiosity. That's another one that comes up a lot in conversations that I have with my guests. They say them, I say them. And I just kind of made the connection that these are some words that kind of can apply in all kinds of situations. You know, it feels to me that investigate just means just check it out a little bit more. You mentioned that you're coming across adoptees that say they cannot heal. Is that what you said? And I would just throw on there yet, right? Y-E-T, like yet might be where they're really coming from, because I think sometimes when we are, and I certainly have been stuck or just didn't have enough answers, did not know enough information. Like prior to getting my original birth certificate, I had no clue of really anything. I was told I was given the name Bonnie at birth, but I didn't know if that was really true or not until I saw that name on my birth certificate. So there was plenty of times in my life where I just didn't have answers, felt a bit stuck. When I hit big brick walls, I remember requesting information from Illinois and being told, no, you can't have that information.
Do you know what
No.
body means?
I'm sorry.
You know what Bonnie means?
I've heard sweet spirit. Tell me, what does it mean?
Well, it's a phrase. It's an adjective that's usually used north of the border, so it's used in Scotland rather than England, right?
Okay.
So they'll refer to Bonnie Scotland, right, which means pretty.
Oh,
Yeah, Bonnie means pretty.
that's quite nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought
I've
you might
heard.
like that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've heard Sweet Spirit many years ago. But I like that name. I actually really like Bonnie.
Yeah. I was thinking about, the investigate and the experiment thing, and you talking about it, you looking at it in different contexts. I was thinking about the therapeutic, like looking for a therapy, looking for a therapy, looking for a therapist. So
I can get with that for sure.
So I think, so I've just started with a new therapist, and she's somatic. She's a somatic. So I'm investigating a new form,
A new modality, yeah.
a new modality, because I'm looking for the bit that's pre-verbal. I'm looking for the stuff that I can't see because it's in my, bones, the basal band stuff. I'm looking at that, and that's off the back of all the therapists that came on Thriving Adoptees last year that said, but so most of us are doing talk therapy. Talk therapy doesn't work if you can't put your trauma into words because it's pre-verbal and pre-memory, pre-cognitive. So investigate, experiment a different thing. So I'm going on a Kathy McKechnie, who's been on the show. She is into I think she's into parts work. Yeah, she's into parts work. So I'm doing a webinar with her. Like I'm going on to attend her webinar for 3 hours next week on Saturday or something like that. So I'm investigating and exploring different things, and rather than the opposite of experiment is pinning all our hopes on one thing, right? So on one thing that we might do as adoptees, we might say, right, okay, I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket, and that basket is reunion. So finding my biological mother is going to heal me. It's going to make me whole, and that's the only thing that's going to cut the mustard. That's the only thing that's the difference that's going to make the difference.
That's being attached to an outcome.
Yeah. And being attached to the outcome, and we don't know what the outcome's going to be. So we're barking up the wrong tree. We could be barking up the wrong tree. We might not be. We might get the dream. We might get the dream outcome.
But that's nice. Yeah, I apologize for interrupting you. But that's when I suffer, when I'm attached to an outcome. Yeah.
You weren't attached. You weren't attached to the outcome with the podcast, right?
No, not at all. I truly think I suffer when I am attached to the outcome and over invested in things turning out a certain way. Yeah, back to that word open. I like to remain open. I like to think I remain open to how it is going to turn out. Kind of like that word adventure. I love that word because when I think of an adventure, you kind of don't know like exactly how it's going to go, but you're along for the ride.
Yeah. And most adventures, like we read a book or we watch a film, the adventure has it has two sides, two things going on, doesn't it? It's the hero's two journeys. So it's the external journey, what's happening in the world, what's happening with our birth parents, what's happening with our adoptive parents, what's happening with our relationships, what's happening with our partners, what's happening with our podcasts, what's happening with our businesses, and then there's the internal stuff, is what's going on the inside, and seeing the difference between the two. Yeah.
And how many times have you watched a movie and it ended unlike you could have predicted? And a lot of times, those are the best movies. When you can't predict what's going to happen, a lot of people will say that. Oh, this was predictable. Or I didn't see that coming, with a big smile.
Yeah.
I watched a movie the other day like that. I was like, that was cool. I didn't predict that.
Yeah. Well, left brains wouldn't like that.
Not at all. That's why I wanted to bring that into this conversation. Thank you for allowing me to do that, because I think Jill Bolte Taylor nailed it. She kept it plain, that it's worth knowing the difference between how parts of our brain are operating, and just get curious, investigate what's going on up there.
Yeah. So what stops us investigating?
Say that again.
What stops us investigating?
What stops us? The unfamiliar, I would say. Not sure what you're going to uncover, what you're going to find in your investigation. I think fear plays a big part when we don't remain open, when we don't necessarily look to learn something new or to even grow. Yeah, I think sometimes it can be scary to do something different than what you've been doing. I just have enough lived experience to know it's usually worked out pretty good. Yeah, it's usually, my investigation usually proves to be worth taking the chance. And I recently was reminded that, I don't know if it was a study or, I don't know, some research that had been done, that when people get to the end of their life, they don't regret like the things they did wrong or, could have done differently. They regret the things that they didn't try, that they didn't investigate, that they didn't look into.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
I've heard that. Another word came to mind as you were talking, and that word was fruitful. Fruitful, yeah. Like your explorations have borne fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Did I tell you about ringing my biological dad? Did I tell you about that?
A little bit.
Yeah. So that was an experiment. And I'd had his phone number for about 8 months, and I'd not rung him. I had his phone number and his address, and then I was talking to somebody, a fellow adoptee, about this, and I just thought, and he said, this guy, Colin is his He's got a pseudonym for writing his books. So Colin said, I said, well, Ray, my birth father's name is Ray. Ray didn't want to have anything to do with my biological mum when she told them that she was pregnant. And Ray and as I was sharing that with Colin said he might have changed his mind. So I thought, yeah, he might have changed his mind. Okay. Let's see, shall we?
Right.
And he hadn't changed his mind. He wasn't interested, but I'm laughing about it. You know, I'm not crying in my pint, as we would say in the north. Right. I'm not. There wasn't anything riding on it.
Right. How do you think you were able to do that, may I ask?
Well, because I wasn't attached to the outcome, to use your thing, because I kind of realized it was a long shot.
Okay.
I guess, and because I hadn't got around him. So a few years ago, I used to do a program with a coach at the start of each year, and it's called Creating the Impossible. And this is a guy called Michael Neal on the West Coast of the States. And so he runs this project, and the kind of the idea of creating the impossible is that you pick something that you think you've only got like a 1% chance of doing, right? So that the pressure of your expectations are gone. And you're expecting, you've just, the name says, oh, creating the impossible. You're trying to create something that you think is actually impossible. So you can go all out.
Right.
You haven't got your self-esteem riding on the outcome. You don't need things to turn out the way that you dream they might turn out.
Right.
And you can go all in.
Right.
Fear, I said what stops us experimenting, and you used the word fear, right? So there's you don't need to fear it anymore, because you don't need to fear failure, because you've set out that it.
That reminds me of a quote. I've heard plenty of people say that, like, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same.
Probably a long list, right?
Yeah. What would you do if you didn't fail?
Yeah.
But our insecurity stops us doing that sort of stuff. And some people could say that some people could say that that's a trauma response. I don't know whether it is or not, but you could definitely pin the tail on that donkey, right?
I revisited our conversation. Actually, it aired a year ago today.
Oh, wow.
Right? I love synchronicities. Yeah, April 3rd of 2020.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, can you believe it? Yeah, it was a year ago today. And a couple things that stood out that I want to mention. And one was your mention of Wayne Dyer, when he went to the grave site of his father. And I think we talked a little more about Wayne Dyer. And it's interesting because he's kind of my mentor online. I've been pulling up podcasts. Of course, he's transitioned, but his podcast and his voice is still very much out there. And I was thinking about that quote, right? And you've probably heard it, that he says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Yeah.
And I love that quote because with the words I gave for the acronym, healing, all of that applies. Like if you just apply those words, it applies to pretty much anything you might be interested in. And I think that you're like, how do I want to put this? It ultimately ends up changing the way you look at things. Yeah, it just really does. The things themselves actually end up changing. And I couldn't recall the title of the book the last time I was here by him, Your Erroneous Zones. I had to be like maybe in the 7th grade. My mother was a librarian and she brought books like this home all the time. And that's when I would be first introduced to Wayne Dyer. So for your listeners, the book I could not recall a year or so ago was Your Erroneous Zones.
Yeah. So it's your erroneous zones, not your erogenous zones. That's the play there, right?
Right. Erroneous.
Yeah. So it's the areas where our beliefs are off, where we are mistaken. He made that guy, Wayne Dyer, made a huge shift halfway through toward the end of his career, from a pretty psychological approach to a more spiritual approach. He was very much in the 60s. He was the, as far as I can gather, he was at the forefront of like positive thinking and mindset stuff. But he moved into the spiritual world. I don't know how well he communicated that.
Well, it's interesting you would say that because I was listening to an episode yesterday or today. I think it was this morning, where he was talking about he did not at one time believe in past lives. Then he got acquainted with Brian Weiss, and I'm familiar with his work. He wrote a number of books on past lives. Anyway, Wayne Dyer was saying that his relationship with Brian, reading the books, that he's had a shift, which would suggest that he was just open. He was open to learning more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting you would say that. Yeah, I could see he made if he made a shift. I think it's kind of known.
And I think that he started championing other people,
Right.
like maybe like Brian Weiss, but the big one that comes to my mind is Anita Moorjani. Have you heard of her?
I don't think so.
So Anita Moorjani had a near-death experience, and she wrote about it in a book called Dying to Be Me. And it's a big, it's a big best-selling book, and Wayne Dyer championed that.
Okay. That title does ring a bell now that you
Dying
mentioned.
to Be Me. dying to be me. So she has a near-death experience, and it's similar to it was similar to Jill Bolte Taylor in that it was a medical thing, but Anita Moorjani was end of life with cancer, and she had a spontaneous healing experience, and it showed her who she was in terms of she had a lived experience. You used the word lived experience earlier on. I think it's really important. She had a lived experience of connecting, being consciousness, being aware of her, what some people might call a spiritual essence, being her the part of us that's unconditioned by that, consciousness, awareness, spirit, being, that stuff, which is a similar sort of thing to Jill Bolte Taylor, the essence of who we are, the blank canvas on which our personality, our values, our beliefs, our trauma appears. Anita Moorjani. So, shifting gears slightly, what would you say have been the most significant healing things for you in the last year since episode aired?
It's interesting that the podcast has really played a major part in healing and feeling a sense of healing, listening to stories from all members of the constellation, but probably primarily from adoptees. I've learned so much. And I think a close second would be the Adoptee Voices writing group. It has been, we finished up 3 years this March. And I think that I could have never predicted how healing that would be, to listen to adoptees read aloud their words and share to the extent that they do. And Adoptee Voices, as you know, created by Sarah Easterly, and I co-facilitate with Kate Murphy and also Alice Stevens. And that's been so healing. Yeah, it's been wonderful. And going back to experiment, that's exactly what I was taking on when Sarah invited me to co-facilitate. I had no idea what I was really getting into. I really didn't. And I guess one of the things I would really want to leave the listeners with, especially any adoptee that feels like they can't heal, won't heal, I throw the word yet on the end of that, and I would suggest we say get curious all the time. And, I'm throwing these other words in, right? Investigate and remain open. And maybe let's use that word help. I find when I help other people, which I feel like I play a part in with the podcast, with the writing group, that's a component of healing. And I believe my guest, each and every one that has said, I hope I can help somebody else by sharing my story, I think that's a component of their healing.
Why do you think that works?
Well, they've said it. They said, I feel good being able to
Oh,
help.
okay. Sorry, wrong question. How do you think helping? How do you think helping feels?
How do I think helping is a part of healing?
Mhm.
I think the best way to say it is there's something about being in a position to give, taking the opportunity to give. And this could be anything. It could be helping your neighbor across the street. Uh, Something about that feels really good. Most people describe when they've been able to help someone, maybe just even cross the street, feels good. Provide information. Like, let me ask you, do you think you're helping through the work you're doing in the community?
I hope so.
I think you are. And I think you are.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that you, through that giving, that helping, is healing.
I think it puts the focus on our oneness rather, our it puts the focus on our oneness rather than our separation. Puts the focus on togetherness.
Well, that certainly sounds like helping.
Yeah. When you think about uh, somebody that's depressed, they tend to lock themselves away.
Isolate, yeah.
Yeah, isolate, and it's the opposite of that, isn't it? Like your so when you talk about adoptee voices, so the adoptee voices is that you co-facilitate. That's about helping adoptees write their books or find their voice, the memoir stuff. So that's what that is all about. And so everybody's giving back and paying forward, and um,
And everybody, I just want to be clear, everybody's not interested in writing a memoir. Some people are not interested in publishing that are part of the group. Like we're entering cohort 13, going into the 4th year. And I think the biggest part of what goes on is community, fellowship, uh, in a space that feels very safe,
yeah,
and being able to get whatever's in your head, like out. Because one thing that's so powerful is even people writing is them reading, them hearing themselves read, read aloud. It's an opportunity to just, I say, invest in oneself and know that it will be well received. Like the feedback from the other adoptees is just wonderful. And you don't have to explain yourself. Everybody's an adoptee, so we get it.
yeah. And referring back to um, the Gabor Mate thing that I'm listening to at the moment, he said, it starts with a broken connection. Trauma is about broken connection with ourselves, connection with others. And I have some I have some bits that I'm not sure he's quite clear on. Connection. How can our connection with ourselves? I would say that that our that implies two. How are we? We can't get in our own way. I, I question stuff like, adoptees tell me on this questionnaire, the healing questionnaire, that they're getting in their own way on the healing journey. No, you're not getting in your own way. You can't get in your own way. Try doing that. Literally, try doing that. Try walking down the street and get in your own way. You can't do it. There's only one of you. What's getting in your way is an idea, is a thought, is a feeling. And Gabor says, with connection with ourselves. Well, there's only one of us. You can have a connection with yourself. Us as the light is endarkened by our trauma. So I would say who we are is hidden by our trauma. There's only one of us. But going back to the connection bit in terms of a connection with others, it's a connection with our birth mother, our birth father, a connection with our adoptive parents. And if we don't feel connected, then the connection that we feel in a group like Adoptee Voices, in a conversation with a fellow adoptee, in a conversation with a fellow adoptee for an interview for a podcast, it's all about connection, and that's the healing power.
Yeah,
because that's been broken too young for too many of us.
yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned Dr. Mate, because the last time I was here, I misspoke, and I would like an opportunity to clear that up. Is that okay?
Of course.
Yeah, so I use the word acceptance and authenticity, and that he spoke about it. If you had to choose one, choose authenticity. I misspoke. It's attachment and authenticity, because both of those are huge survival needs. And at times they may be incompatible. And so it's important not to lose touch with ourselves, which is the authenticity piece, or suppress our gut feelings. So that's what I should have said.
Yeah.
If you have to choose between attachment and authenticity, choose authenticity. Thank you.
Yeah. That feels like a good place to bring it in.
What a great time with you, Simon. Thank you again for this opportunity. It is an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, it is for us both. Thanks, listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye.